Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Committee on Ordinance. Today is Thursday, June 17, and the time is 5:40 p.m. Thank you all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Sherman Espinal,
Present?
Vice Chairwoman Shelly Peterson. Present. Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris. Present. Councilman Oscar Vargas.
Present.
Councilor Justin Reyes.
Present.
You have 5 present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our city solicitor and each of the council members that are here. Very proud, Gary, deputy with Councilman Goldfeld and senior deputy, as well as Councilman Sanchez and our finance chair, Councilwoman Anthony. Thank you, clerks. Thanks for everyone that is visiting us. Thank you. Now, Chief of Staff, Jewel Rose. Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda, please.
Item number 1, an ordinance amending chapter 2 administration, section 2-13, entitled personal use of city vehicles of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence.
Thank you. So this item had been presented a number of months ago. I really tried here to address certain concerns that Councilman would like to elaborate on this.
Sure. This is a requirement to support and work with all the orders that we have is that he is spending too much gasoline and the city of Providence, plus we notice that a lot of cars goes out of the city at nighttime. And there's been there some concern that they might be using them for personal use. And we're trying to avoid the taxpayers' money to go out of the city and have people use these vehicles that belongs to the property belongs to the taxpayers for city use business only. And we're trying to avoid this. That's why we work in this new ordinance to see how we can control it more.
You'll be going to address that. Any question from committee members? Councilor Harris.
Yeah, have you experienced that yourself, like, vehicles that have been, parked someplace where they're not supposed to be or whatever? I'm just trying to find out the gist of why you feel this is really important.
It is very important because if you see the employees in the city, 7 employees take the cars home.
How many?
I don't know, several cars. We don't know how many, but it's not fair. When you get a job, you have to drive your own car, wherever you go, and you don't get a car. And we are catering to these employees where they have a good salary job. Instead, we give them a partial, we're trying to save money. And the city is trying to work on this. It's for a better future. We can save any dollar, any penny, anywhere we can we can do that. That's what we have to protect the tax.
No, and the reason I'm asking, I'm just trying to figure out because, I mean, I don't experience any calls in my neighborhood being parked overnight, but that's not saying it doesn't happen, you know, I'm sure it does. Is this, allowed by their employer to take the car home, or is that something that just been historically a part of Providence business?
This is what we're trying to find out, why these employees are taking this car home and what is the reason for. Is a need to, or it doesn't need, like the police department. Police department, they can take the car home because they are always an emergency. Right? But all the departments, they don't need to take the car home. There's no emergency for them to come back when they leave a high speed. They drive an hour, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half outside the city, and you're back money. That's a good problem. That's the reason we're trying to work with these ordinances to avoid these ways. Tax rate.
Thank you.
Councilor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. Counselor, do you, know, without like obviously disclosing names, Are there specific departments that rely on city owned vehicles more than others? You mentioned the police department. Could you name other departments besides emergency personnel that you've noticed take home the city owned vehicles?
If there are several departments in the city of Providence that they take car home, they don't need to take the car.
You know, if I just.
I don't like to display his names or the department.
Okay, fair.
Because I don't want to, by doing this, I'm creating enemies, but I'm here to protect the taxpayer. If they're not here to protect the taxpayer, just to spend the taxpayers' money, welcome to reality, because we're here to protect the taxpayers' money. And I see this is a waste. To give a car to a person to go home, when they live far away from the city, doesn't look right. And that's why I'm working on this ordinance.
And when I was taking action tonight on this, we have celebrated. Motion granted to the right later on. So it's still amendment, it's only
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to confirm, so you're amending an existing ordinance, it's not a new ordinance, correct?
That's what we have amendment system for. We want to enforce the existing ordinance. I think they found a loophole. That's what I want to try to avoid. And trying to work with the department.
So just to follow up on that quickly, do you think there is enough enforcement mechanisms in the new amendment?
That's what we're here. To look for enforcement, to look for new ideas, how we can enforce it. And to find out how we can save.
Thank you.
That's McGowan.
Thank you, Chairman. And there's no specific provision to account for police vehicles, so is that because it just says unless prior written authorization for such use has been obtained by the mayor's designee or by the director of the department, so if you theoretically, the chief could say, you know, for his tenants or whoever has their vehicles that they use at home, they would be able to receive that authorization through that clause.
Under the police department, the detective and that department, they allow to take the cars home because they own mark, they own control. So they need to come back right away for the shooting or something happened in the city. They can come back, but the other departments, I would like to enforce, well, every single car has to be sealed. For the city seal and which department they're from. For example, it's a DPW car, has to be a DPW seal on it. There's a parks department car, has to be a parks department seal on it. There's a public property car, has to be a public property seal on it. You know, some of them they don't have it. They don't have it, so the issue is, that's what we're trying to avoid. Why these cars don't have a seal? They don't see. And by doing this, it's like, the car can be anywhere, people, they don't care about the plate. But if you have a seal, oh, this car belongs to Providence, what is car doing Providence like? Outside the city, 10 o'clock in PM.
You, Councilman, before we go further, I'd like to acknowledge the Council President, Rachel Miller has joined us, as well as Pro Tem Gonzalez. That's all you said.
Thank you. Thank you for the ordinance and I'm understanding what you're saying. One of the questions that I have though is, and I guess maybe public property might be able to kind of give us the lay of the land of how the current ordinance operates, and how vehicles are dispersed, but, if I'm not mistaken, the state requires you to go to your building, drop your car off, and leave your building, and then pick up the vehicle, like the state vehicle that you're gonna use, and then return it to your. You're saying that we give the opportunity for vehicles to be used for city employees to go home. And that's the reason why we're trying to make sure that we be a little bit more stringent on the policy, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so thank you, that's a just one clarification.
Anybody else? We're not, I'll entertain a motion to add into the record, so that.
Second.
Okay.
So moved, sorry.
Six, motion to the Council Peterson, second by. I don't want to say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we have it. With that said, I was gonna motion to continue item number one. A motion to continue. By Councilman Peterson, second by Councilman Royer. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. I'll let the motion, we'll wait the reading or add 2, 3, and 4. We'll take them together. Madam Clerk.
Motions?
So, motion, made by Councilman Peterson, second by Councilman Royer, second aye.
Aye.
Both, yes, have it. And I also have a packet. Survey for 2, 3, and 4. I'll let the motion to enter into the record. Survey for
There-
2, 3, and 4.
They're letters of testimony.
They are let's testify for it.
Yes, not a sub A.
Okay. So it's made by Councilman Peterson. Second. And second by Councilman White. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Both, yes, thank you. Councilman Peterson.
Sure.
Thank you.
And, so thank you, everybody, for hearing me today. I do want us to preface all of this conversation by saying this is just, for hearing me. We're going to be doing, public hearing on the student housing ordinances, in September. So this is just an opportunity to discuss what it is that we're doing here. And I'll start with student tax fee. Councilman Gonzalez is here, and he is the lead sponsor on this, but I do want to make sure that I give a little bit of an explanation as to what we're proposing here. So the first one is student tax fee, and essentially what it is a. Sorry, I get people distracted. What this is a $300 student tax fee per student annually. Designated to the owner of the property that exclusively rents to students. The way that we do this, what we're proposing is that any student who resides off campus, which in my particular neighborhood is only seniors and very few juniors, that the property owners in that area obtain a $300 student impact fee to be able to support the municipal services that are required. Sometimes additional requirement in terms of being able to provide essential municipal city services. This has come, my particular ward has had for over a year and a half, a student housing task force, which everybody has been invited to come and join. We've offered the opportunity to all developers, colleges, students, and neighbors. And one of the things that has come in conversation about how much student housing has impacted the neighborhoods is just the extra reliability on the necessary services that comes in. In my particular neighborhood, there are developers that actually come in and take care of the quality of life issue that do come with the consistent partying and things that happen, but that's not in exactly every other part of the ward, so we have to do street sweepings in other places a little bit more. We have to do the sewer areas a little bit more, and these are opportunities for extra support when it comes to the municipal services that we have, police, fire, et cetera. One of the things that I think is important about this is that there has been, we are asking in this particular ordinance for the universities to assist us with very basic information. It's not identifying information. But all we're asking for is the total number of students enrolled at the school, total number of students enrolled that reside on campus, total number of students that don't reside on campus, and an anonymized breakdown of the number of students enrolled, which includes just address and unit number. And then the type of property that is in. So in order for us to be able to enforce and make sure that we have that, we are asking the schools to be supportive of the initiatives that we're trying to do in the city. To be able to, start creating some sort of a balance with what we have as impact students. Councilman Gonzalez, if you want to add anything.
Glad to hear.
Thank you, Councilor Peterson, for your leadership and your tireless work on this issue. I think this was also born out of the critical need to generate more revenue for the city. Obviously, we had a really tough budget year. And this is a way, again, for us to generate more revenue. I want to be clear about the fact that this ordinance is not designed to punish students or landlords. In fact, every single year, students pay, just had a conversation with Brown recently, upwards of about $200 a year, student activity fee. And as you know, the cost of living continues to rise, not only for our residents, but also students who are paying tuition. And this is a way that they can share their responsibility for the services that they use. I would also like to point out the fact that the housing stock in Providence has suffered enormously from competing with students. If you look at Fox Point in particular, that neighborhood has been completely gentrified as a result of students continually taking up that housing stock, which puts downward pressure on the market. So you've got long-term residents who have been displaced in my neighborhood because they simply can't compete with students who are taking up these units. And if you've got one student who's paying $1,000 and another student who's paying $1,000 and another student who's paying $1,000 in one unit, the average Providence resident can't afford $3,000 for a unit. It's just, so that's the other component where we're dealing with this affordability issue, and so many people are getting pushed out as a result of our large tax exempt institutions. The other piece to this is, as our large tax exempt institutions continue to face some financial struggles as a result of what we're seeing from the Trump administration, they are potentially going to raise enrollments. And we've seen that happen steadily across the years where, I'll be very frank, when I have conversations with the universities in my ward, whether it's Brown or Risky, when you ask them very definitively, do you have plans to raise enrollment rates? They can never give you a straight answer. And the way that they're going to adjust for their budget losses is precisely that. They're going to add more students, and that's going to put even more pressure on the market. I did want to talk a little bit about what the ordinance does specifically. As Councilor Peterson mentioned, it applies to post-secondary institutions, so colleges and universities located in the city of Providence. If we do the math on students who live in dwellings that are exclusively inhabited by students, that could be upwards of over 10,000 students in the city. The numbers are not definitive, but I've heard a range. We've done some research anywhere from 7,000 to even 13,000. But if you charge a $300 student impact fee, it's $150 over the course of 6 months to pay for the same municipal services that we all use, whether it's police, fire, emergency medical response, street maintenance, snow removal. That could generate millions of dollars for our city budget every single year, which could potentially alleviate the burden on the rest of our city. And students are transient, but they certainly, in many cases, undermine quality of life. I'm not saying all students. We have very, responsible graduate students, but the parties, the noise, everything, the trash that comes with being a student is a challenge for many of our neighbors. And I think a lot of our neighbors, at least the ones that we've spoken to, are very much supportive of having them pay their fair share. The reason why we went this route with looking at landlords essentially paying this fee is because we can't, because of the MOA and MOU with the large tax exempt institutions, we can't impose this on the colleges and universities. That would be a violation of the MOA and MOU. But it's pretty straightforward. The fee could be adjusted. I think, we're very reasonable here. We want to continue to hear from the members of our community, whether it's students, whether it's landlords. We understand that there are students out there, and, you know, I could be the first one to attest to this, where they might have financial challenges, or it might be tricky for them to pay that fee. So looking at things like exemptions to account for people or students who may not be able to afford this impact. But ultimately, this is about ensuring that we're all doing our part. It's, again, I want to emphasize that it's not about punishing students or landlords. It's really about fairness, generating more revenue in a way that we could potentially look at our rates, lower our rates for our tax rates. And we want this to be a collaborative effort, not a combative one. And again, it's a good way for us to ensure that the students are having a meaningful contribution. And I know Councilor Peterson and I, and would certainly welcome this conversation with all of our colleagues here. We've been looking at what meaningful contributions could these students make. Is it, you know, towards Providence Public Schools, for example, where the funds that are generated from this would offset the funds that we're dishing out every year annually for our school department. We can offset the settlement costs, for example. That's something that would really help our city and free up our budget to do other important things that we have as a priority for the city. So I hope that the students can look at this and say, this is our way to also contribute, to give back to our local community. We're not gonna be here forever, but this is a good way for us to do our part. So we look forward to working with everybody, and ultimately think it's a public policy that we hope we can continue to collaborate with folks on.
Thank you, Councilman. Also, I'd like to acknowledge, Councilwoman and the Watts join us. Thank you for being here. So that is here question number 2. Any questions from my committee member who came to the school that impact? Councilman Juarez.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for the Council Peterson. You may have mentioned this already, I apologize, but where in other cities is this type of intervention existing for this?
So actually, student impact fee, in the cities that we've done a lot of research throughout the US to kind of figure out what different things, different cities and townships did to support the efforts to create some sort of balance with their student impact. This is actually the first time in the country that we would be asking for it, that any city or town would be asking for it.
Councilman Vargas.
The question is like, let's say for 3 students in the house. So the property owner has to come up with $900. Or this student has to pay the property owner to pay the city, or will be $300 once, or will be $25 a monthly payment?
That's a good question. We are asking the developer to make the payment, to the city. How they address it and handle it for their tenants is up to them.
So the student impact fee, but it's actually kind of estimate that it's not going to come from the student, come from the landlord.
It's completely up to the student as, excuse me, so it's completely up to the discretion of the landlord whether or not they want to impose a fee on the student. As opposed to covering the costs.
If it wouldn't be labeled as a student contribution if we can't do the minimum. Councilman Harrison.
Yes, I'm just wondering about enforcement. I mean, it's so hard for us to get to some people who just. Like, true, legal also, and this one, it sounds like it's an in-kind act. You know, it's not like, we're forcing you to pay this, it's sort of like, and I'm just trying to figure out. Exactly what the enforcement would be.
So actually, this does come with a non-compliance violation or a fine. It would be a $500 a day fine imposed to the property owner. However, there is, which is the second ordinance that I put through, is a way for us to navigate through the opportunity to have some standards as to how we would be able to enforce.
Councilman Roberts.
Thank you. Do we, have you worked in a buffer plan, like, let's say the student moving into a property, right? You probably only have to pay $300 then. But then the student move out in 3 months. How the property owner is going to return the $150 to the student, he will pay the city $300 for the student to be there.
Good question. Students are required to sign leases with whoever their landlord is. So we would expect some sort of, whatever their mechanism of enforcing their own rents, to include some sort of a clause on that too. And the city would not be, to my knowledge, but this is, again, an opportunity for us to generate some more feedback to then make some changes. Councilman Gonzalez, we haven't discussed any way of providing a feedback to anybody in the event of a situation like that, right?
I mean, the ordinance is very clear about non-compliance. So if a property is found in violation, the city would issue a formal notice to the owner. And, to your point, there could be situations where someone moves out. I mean, that could happen if someone, let's say, is a property owner and they decide to move out of their home, you know, but they still have to pay the taxes to the city. That's not an obligation that they can skirt. I do want to share that, Councilor Peterson mentioned that this is more of an innovative idea, but there are other municipalities that have proposed something similar. It hasn't been enacted, but in 2023, the Boston City Council President, former Boston City Council President, actually introduced this ordinance, a student impact fee. The fee would be $1,000 per student, actually, that they were proposing in Boston. In Berkeley, California, it's not a traditional student impact fee, in the sense that it's via ordinance, but it's through basically their pilot agreement. And we're precluded from doing that because, again, we have our MOA and MOU with Brown University. So we were looking at a creative mechanism in which to, if we could, right, we would have just went straight with the universities and had the universities administer these fees to the city. But this is sort of the creative mechanism that we had to look at as a result of us not being able to do that directly with the university. And I should say, like, one last thing is, if we look at my alma mater, Brown University, for example, right? They own over $3 billion in total assessment. They were to pay what everybody else is paying in the city, that'd be roughly over $50 million to the city coffers every year. $7 million that we get annually from their pilot payment, I look at it as a $43 million savings annually. They've got a multi-billion-dollar endowment. A couple years ago, on a $7 billion endowment, they saw 51% returns. They continue to gobble up properties, take properties off the tax rolls. This is truly like the least that they can do if they're not going to build the housing stock to accommodate their students who are competing with with the housing stock that our residents really need. We have an affordability crisis, so that also addresses that issue as well.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We also have a lack of housing available to constituents here. If we take a look in my particular report, anybody can drive by and see how much density has been built specifically and exclusively for students. It's happened so fast that there hasn't been an opportunity to be able to save it off. And while I can certainly understand the need for the students, what it has done, it has taken people away. The area that was once a working class area is no longer affordable. And when people are contending with at base minimum $2,500 rents, that's not what student housing landlords charge. This is just base rent in a neighborhood that was predominantly 1,200 as a median. And this has been a swing in the past 5 to 7 years. It's a lot to be able to withstand for any sort of neighborhood as people continue to do to find more affordable places to live.
Okay, so Councilman, is this per unit? I'm sorry, let me just, Councilman said that mistake was formed because I wasn't here. Is this per student or per unit?
This would be, per student. Similarly, you know, if you've
So
got.
if there is 5 students in one apartment, you know, it's $1,500.
Yeah, well, you have to think about the quality of life challenges that come with students. And similarly, you know, if a student goes to a college or university, they pay that student activity fee every year. It's, for Brown, like I said, it's upwards of over $200 a year. If your goal is to live off campus, which is a choice, I think the city can either incentivize or disincentivize people from living off campus. And so if you feel strongly that your preference is to live off campus, then that choice also comes with giving back to our city in a meaningful way. You rely on the same city services that everybody else relies on. And it's critically important that if you decide to live off campus, which is a choice, that you're.
But you don't have an educational institution collecting these fees. You have landlords collecting them.
Right.
Yes, and that's, again,
And
that's,
the landlord turn around and say, this is additional taxation. What if they don't have a for the collect tax? What do we have a landlord defend with us of that?
I think that's a fair argument to certainly wage. But again, if a university is charging their students an annual activity fee, we could wage that same argument and say that's also a
But
tax.
the universities are not the landlords here. The small investors, small landlords that are charging this, that are renting to the students.
Yeah.
Because as,
Sure, go ahead.
I believe, and this is my personal belief, that if you're taking space in a city where you're exclusively only offering rent or an opportunity to rent to one specific group of people, then you should pay for them. We are not giving or affording the entire city population the opportunity to be able to live in these properties. And they are not paying, nor could a city, or Providence city resident be able to pay anywhere from $800 to $1,300 per bed in any given unit. And that's just the reality. So if you're going to be able to collect in that nature, a $300 student tax fee at $25 a month per student should not be something that we labor with.
And I don't disagree with envision rather than. So that we can continue to provide city services, municipal services. He's trying to find the best that is there. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the sponsor a question? Thank you. I think this is a great piece of legislation. Definitely some tweaking that could possibly be implemented, but I think that's why we're all here. How did you guys come to the $300 figure? What was the?
I defer to you, Councilman.
Yeah, I would say, you know, if you look at the market and what universities are charging their students annually, it's basically, it derives from that. And then there's also a provision that says the fee could be adjusted annually based on inflation, and that's based on the consumer price index for the Northeast. And again, that fee is arbitrary, like there's an opportunity to potentially lower the fee if we find that it's too burdensome for students. Maybe it's not $300, maybe it's $200, and in that case, that's the cost of basically, every 6 months, you pay $100 as a student. Like, that's the cost of paying for an overnight parking permit. If you are someone who wants to park overnight, you pay a fee. The overnight parking permit, and that's how you get that service. Similarly, we're providing services for students. And this is the way for them to do their part to contribute meaningfully for the city. The other piece I would say from an economic perspective is every year, when we look at the tax rates, the reason why we can't come down on some of the tax rates is because we don't have the revenue to adjust for that. So if we have a surplus of revenue that comes in, that's also an opportunity for us to adjust the tax rates accordingly and maybe even lower the tax rates so that way we can accommodate our budget. The 2 to 3% annual growth that the city is experiencing every year is like, that's great, right? And there's a lot of growth and development that's happening in the city. But this is also another opportunity for us to balance our budget, but also address some of the affordability issues. Also for landlords who are providing the service, which is housing. The goal is not to be punitive on students or landlords. And we certainly are open to having that discussion.
Can I follow up on that?
Quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, I asked that question because I have the argument that the fee is too low. I think one of the main objectives in the work that we're doing is to not necessarily deter or decrease. I think the goal is to decrease student housing, new development that's happening around our neighborhoods. Like you mentioned, it's not small landlords that are doing this work. That's the argument that I would make. It's LLCs that have multi-million-dollar investors and God knows where putting up this money, and they're able to charge 1,000, 1,300 per room. So I think if the goal is to try to limit that issue, I think this fee should be higher. Because what does that do? That will put the landlord, the developer in a position that instead of having to pay this fee and charge high rents, they're going to be able to charge market rate or slightly lower market rate, not have to pay this fee and be able to provide a unit to a family or a young professional here in Providence. So I just want to make that point across to hopefully continue that perspective while these conversations continue. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Roy, before we go to you, just another point, is this all student in state or out of state? Or is it all schools?
It's all students, undergraduate and graduate that are in post-secondary
Where they're
education.
each state?
The key here is where the housing is exclusively to, I'm sorry,
Yes,
right.
That's no worries.
Thank you, Chair. I think just 2 comments I want to make. I think the elephant in the room is that the cost is going to get passed to the student. And I know we have a few, the developer community here today. I gotta be honest, first of all, I don't think, the model of student housing is particularly a model that's pursued by smaller landlords in the city. I also think that, have you all seen like the cost that students are charged per room in the city? I don't know if their landlords are doing them any justice by what they're charging these students to pay in rent. And so I would just like to register that opinion, because if we're worried about passing this to the student, I think they're already paying an incredible, really like, just, it's not even market rate. I think what the students are paying are well above market rate. So I just want to put that out there because I think the elephant in the room, and we're not saying it here, is that the cost would get passed to the student. I think, they're already paying a pretty high cost of rents, and if the feeling is, well, I care about students, and if that's a sentiment shared by the developer community, I think it's quite hypocritical, so. Sure.
Any announcement, Councilor Levis?
Thank you, President. I see that like trying to go after the property owners. For $300 per student, when they have a 3-family house. And if they got 3 students per unit. That's 900, 1,800, but 900 is almost $2,700 a year. That basically is almost half. To the taxes whether this property pay. So this property, the family now they're going to be paying at least close to $10,000 in taxes. Plus, we put another $2,600 because to nice to it. The idea is great. Why we don't have the student to come to the city hall and pay the student impact fee? And when they come to me, I said, can I have a receipt that you pay your impact? If I can rent it out to you. So that one is not going to be me trying to raise the rent on him. But he will came to the city hall, pay his fees, he can go anywhere, I said, look, I'm gonna rent for you, I already pay my student impact fee, because that's what's important. But we wanna pass it on to the property owner. Then I guess.
Thank you for that. Can I, city president, can I ask you a question? Sure. For us to be able to determine that, we would have to need some sort of information from the college to determine who is not a student in the city, correct?
Well, that is always doing certainly.
Right.
Yeah, so there could be a self-reporting requirement.
Self-reported requirement or that way. Would he violate any sort of federal laws by imposing or requesting this information from the college?
So that's a good question. So maybe, I'm not the education expert in our office. And since the state's takeover, we've actually outsourced it, now it's no longer in-house, so there are concerns, I would have concerns that FERPA and a number of other privacy laws, so I would say don't until you know, and I don't.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to give a little bit of context to the councilman. I did my research on that because I agree with you. Trying to find a better option for this, instead of imposing it on the landlord or the developer, was not the first idea in creating this. However, we already have a lot of hindrance when we ask the colleges for even just a basic consequence to an issue that happened on the streets when the students were parking. The colleges, in my experience, have not given us enough information, and they have been able to do so due to federal guidelines for FERPA, which I don't know for the top of my head right now. But they are not allowed to give any information, any identifying information of the student in any given context. So we had to rely on the colleges to be able to give us this information, which is why when we requested student, when we put information in about student, the colleges assisting us, it has nothing to do with identifying information, it's just reporting 3 students for that 52 handbook. That's it, and that's food decker for multi-family home. There's no identifying information in it so that we can avoid violating into the federal laws. If we were to do it this way, we would have to be reliant on self-reporting. And there's no way to actually enforce that a student's actually gonna do like, paying that.
All right, thank you, Councilman.
I'll be very brief. I am very supportive of this ordinance and so thankful to Councilor Peterson and Councilor Gonsalves for bringing this forward. I just want to say that the thing I really like about this is student housing residence is defined as a residential building not occupied by its own. So this is a building that's totally, at however many units are in it, are all student. And I think we just need to keep in mind, I like the argument, I think this is right, that the students are displacing other families that need to live in these units. And so I think imposing this fee is certainly gonna be a deterrent. And it should be, is all I'm gonna say. I think and we did a little bit of a dive starting, when we were doing our budget this year, looking into who is owning these. Even the smaller 2 to 3 families, you've got big developers buying them up all over the city now. And I'm sure they're buying them up because they're going to pack them with students and taking them off the market for our residents who are in need of living, families, other non-students. And so, I'm very, very supportive of this. I know there's a lot of details and how we're gonna get the information and then how we're going to enforce it. Those are difficult, thorny issues. But overall, I think this approach is critical. And I'll also add just quickly, the Brown, for instance, we have up on College Hill, we have beautiful residences that are stuffed full of students, just chopped up. And they can do that. So we may have a ton of students living in these big buildings. And we have a lot of problems, nuisance problems with the neighbors up there. And the Brown police can't enforce anything off their campus. And so they rely on our Providence police. And I'm sorry, that's a drain on our city services. We have other needs that have to be met by our Providence police. And they are trying to deal with these nuisance issues created by landlords that have purchased buildings and then just stuff them full of students. So I'm very supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. So before we close, item 2, I have a question to the sponsor, if we got the research, but to the city solicitor. So the relationship Rhode Island between the landlord and the tenant is governed by the Rhode Island tenant and landlord pact. So this fee would be an additional fee between the tenant and the landlord. Would that have an impact, city solicitor? Let's say if a student is paying with the rent, but has not paid student impact fee, will that student be able to be evicted? Because now there's a different element that's coming into play within the landlord and the student, not just the rent. The law we have in place is for the rent. But if we impose a student impact fee, which the landlord is going to charge the student, how does that play? Would that be impacted?
So that's a complicated question with a complicated answer. So if the landlord incorporates it as a separate line item and the student doesn't pay it, it's a part, I would argue that it's a part of the rent not being paid. It's like as though they were breaking out cable fees or, electrical or a parking pass, something, just like another part of it. So if they don't actually pay the full amount owed, breach of contract. And so that would invoke the landlord tenant statute for violation of the lease, which would allow that landlord to start triggering the 10-day notice to quit and all the other requirements for an eviction. So that's one thing. If the lease itself doesn't incorporate that, I honestly don't know how that would be then. I wouldn't know how that would necessarily play out, and that's what things get complicated. I don't know. It would also depend on how the final language of this ordinance, so I would have to see that and try that.
These are some of the things that we still need to work on. So councilor briefly, you want to touch upon number 3 and 4 before we have another item that's going to take.
So number 3, sure, thank you very much. So number 3 is licensing of student housing. As seen in other cities and towns, one of the more successful opportunities to be able to regulate what student housing is in a city or a township is the opportunity to have a license. And so what we're proposing here is to have a designated student housing licensing fee of $500 annually. One of the things that I do want to make sure that people are aware of is that one thing that we did not do in this is actually create an appeals process for any given landlord, and that is something that I was an oversight on my part, and I actually do want to create an amendment to that, but we're still working out what the logistics look like. Hence the reason why this should be continued. But there The proposal is for any property that is exclusively renting to students in the city of Providence would be charged a $500 annual fee per property.
Would you like to also elaborate number 4 and then we'll take it together?
Sure. With regards to number four is just a codification of what we already do, when we tax, for nuisances, for nuisance property. The, traditionally, if there's a nuisance property, whether, and it's deemed a nuisance property, these properties go to what's called nuisance task force. One of the things that we often found was that when a property was sent to nuisance task force to be discussed and evaluated to find out exactly what was going to happen next, the next steps to a problem property, it took us a long time to be able to get some information. And one of the things that our own policy team, our own council staff had found was that in any given year, or at least, last year, there was cancellation of meetings anywhere from 14, 18 times in the year. For us to be able to actually find some sort of remedy for our constituents that are consistently asking for a problem property that is next door to them to be addressed. Situations like this hinder the opportunity to be able to find some sort of conclusion. So what we've asked and what we've done is just simply codify nuisance task force into ordinance so that we can go ahead and have some very specific measures be done. So I believe it's they're going to meet on a monthly basis, and nothing really has changed outside of the way that they already do their work. It's just codifying it into ordinance so that it is now an obligation to do other things.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Right, so.
Yeah, this national, this is a good one, because what's going on is, we have a lot of issues. And they don't take it seriously. And I would like to work in this one with you, how we can, doesn't need or point people who willing to work on it, and we at least once every month to discuss what problems are coming up down the line. And then we can send a notice to the property owner to see if they can fix the problem or do something about it. But it's taking, for them to be, and it has to be like 20 reports from the same person. It's not for different people.
Yeah.
Has to be the same person calling. Has to be like a bunch of words, like the fire has to go there once or twice. Police has to be at the property like 25 times. You take action, that's too much. Should this national task or should they happen under this? Oh, number 5, they should bring it up. Question.
I don't disagree. Thank you.
So thank you so much. So that, Councilor Harris, please.
Yeah, I do know that the nuisance task force do exist right now. I'm just trying to figure out, some of these people are already there, like, the police is there, the AG is there. And I maybe think, I know we had a debt person that was discussed, however, just heard my colleagues say that it doesn't, well, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or it doesn't do for it. What makes this a little bit more powerful, or give it the boost that it needs, because, I mean, some of these people already sit there, and I thought they were people that would have some influence on change. But, I mean, we added some more people, but what would make this any different?
My mind, sure, thank you.
This is great, but how do we do it?
Thank you. My first step was, so I should preface by saying, I believe that when we create ordinances and we craft ordinances, they're just like anything for us to make them better. As time goes on, we should be making something that's a little bit more palpable and better as time also goes on. So this was just a preliminary of us to say, we're putting this into law now. This isn't a suggestion or a recommendation. This is actually something that we're going to be doing and we're sticking to one time per month. From there, I would like to be able to see as we continue this, how we can amend it to make it better. If there are any specific things that we're looking to be able to make to quantify the ability to use this as opposed to just saying this is gonna be there one time a month, not gonna address the things that are gonna be there. I think that Councilman Vargas brought up some really good points about how long it takes for us to be able to consider that. But I think that because, and this is my opinion, because this was just recommendation for the process that we followed without any sort of actual order, we couldn't do any of that. So this is gonna allow us an opportunity to be able to codify it in and then start working and maybe collaboratively to make something. Take that.
So you're saying, well, what we operating under now is just up for recommendations. So you give recommendations instead of having power to enforce,
Solicitor, if I could ask you just to weigh in, because I don't wanna call it a recommendation as we do use this in practice. So I wanted to ask if this is something in terms of how we utilize it now. It's not necessarily just a recommendation, but it is a tool.
Yeah, I suppose it's just, I think it's a means that kind of, it's like a way to get stakeholders in the room who can assert more control or authority and get people on the same page to, that's why the attorney general's there, that's why police department's there.
I appreciate that. I couldn't think of a better word.
Happy to be a thesaurus whenever you need it.
but I'm still a little bit stuck. Because the AG is there, true that is, and some of the police is there, but it is not. According to Councilman, and not only that, I've tried to get the nuisance task force to look at, planning housing in my ward. And I know it's sort of difficult. Is it because they don't meet regularly? I'm just trying to. Exactly, because if all that power is already there.
They need for a case, not requiring multiple.
I don't know,
I'm not exactly sure of the reasons why. I do know that in an effort to be able to work on certain properties in my neighborhood that were considered nuisance. It took us a very long time to be able to address certain issues. That could have been done, I think, if we met more regularly, and I think a one time a month is not necessarily, and I understand that everybody has multiple moving parts to their position, but I do think that this is a very good tool that we have in the city. And I do want to make sure that it becomes a little bit more accessible for the things that we're trying to do with it. And so I think that this is, like I said, the first step to making it, hopefully addressing larger or more specific things, and hopefully we can tailor it to essentially be able to support us in our communities in the way that we want them to be supported. So if we're reducing in the first year, let's just say the calls for one property from 20 to 5, to me, that's a huge success, because what it did was it addressed something a lot quicker. And I just think that by putting this into ordinance, that's one of the steps that I hope will happen within that first year. So the more.
Thank you.
Gotcha, all right.
Thank you, Councilman, please.
I just have a question to the sponsor.
Sure.
Notice on the ordinance, there's no reporting, requirement. Is that something that, it's already done, or are you open to putting in a reporting, requirement to the city council as a communication, so that way, city council members, and people are aware of, the meetings and also their minutes?
I apologize, you said reporting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, actually, we have a council staff member that attends. Our director of visitor services attends, but she will, at any given time, if there is something, she will report it back to us. I don't disagree that we should put some sort of a reporting requirement in there. And I wouldn't mind creating that amendment. As I said, we're gonna be doing a public hearing on these, so I'm happy to do that. when it's
Yes, for
time.
future, I think that as administrations or councils change, at least you have a reporting report coming to the council and have some of that transparency that people can look at some of the nuisance sectors.
Thank you. Thank
I think
you.
the first couple of questions, let's move on. This is an initial conversation. There will be time for public comments, as we will have a public hearing on this. So with that said, I would take a motion to continue and 2, 3, and 4.
Aye.
Both of us have it, and 2, 3, and 4 are continued. Back for item number 5, please.
Item number 5, resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Excel Academy Rhode Island.
Thank you. So I have exhibit 5B, which is letters of testimony for and against, as well as a document from Councilor Royce. I'll entertain a motion to enter exhibit 5B into the record. Seconded by Councilor Peterson, second by Councilor. Both were cited. I also have a survey. And with copies. So I'll entertain a motion to enter the record, so for 5A. Made by Councilor Peterson, seconded by Councilor Vargas, so let's say aye. Both the ayes have it, thank you. Do we have any council president, you're ready to present, item number 5?
I'm here to start that, yeah. Chairman, I realized this morning that, you are the one actually who put this resolution in, and you have been incredibly gracious, in like yielding a lot of, time and, power, such as it is, to the representative from the board, so I want to thank you for that publicly and otherwise. I had a moment this morning, I was like, oh, that is our majority leader's resolution that I've,
Thank you, yes, I
Put my hands on it.
am the sponsor of the lease, and it's been about 15 months that we've been working on this. But I've been many meetings, I've been having lots of conversation, and a ton of amendments that were made. So I gratefully thank you for being here, speak on some of them.
Yeah, so I'm gonna walk us through, just to remind everyone where we left off last time, or to take us all the way back to, more than a year ago, when there was a lease in front of us for, a proposal for Achievement First at Excel Academy that, this council rejected. We have a new lease in front of us for Excel Academy, and I think it was like 6 weeks ago, that we paused that conversation. Because I felt very strongly that we didn't have, actual data to inform the decision, right? So, qualitatively, and I've heard from neighbors, and I've felt this way at various times myself, that the building is in a very dense neighborhood. It ought to be able to, we are in a housing crisis, right? It ought to be able to lend itself to housing. So the council graciously allowed me to, do a couple of small dollar contracts to get some actual data. And so I know that you just did a round of, exhibits. I don't know if this packet was one of them. It is. Great. So I want to just walk councilors through this and that, our staff for help with, which one is necessary. Yeah, I'll, yeah. So starting with the one that's like, looks like this memo, or let me just tell you what isn't. There's this memo that summarizes what happened. There's this one that's very handily in very large letters, says Carl D. Loro School Housing Study. There's like a map here. And then there's a Excel spreadsheet on a larger piece of paper. And I see, does everyone have all those things? Do you have it? All right. Gonna wait for paper to get situated. I don't think we have the last two that you just said. That's one that says, on the spreadsheet.
There it is.
Oh, it's down, it's back to back in that packet, okay. So yours looks a little different than the all one. Alright. So There's another copy. Oh, thank you, yes, no, physically. Yeah, please. Thank you.
I have more copies here, just the memo than we need to one.
I think we need the other, please. On the side, I think, no.
Oh, this is a very paper heavy ordinance, really, I vote
Yeah.
to our clerks.
Okay.
Everyone.
Is everyone on set?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take us through this, much of this information, it was a very short timeline that we were working on because we wanted to, move this conversation forward. And because PTSD has plans to be, has already done construction, has plans to be in the building in September, and that creates a set of activities. We really wanted to have this happen before the break, so. A lot of things happened in a short period of time. We worked with, and I really want to thank June Rose for coordinating a lot of different players. But we first worked with Co Everything, which is an architectural company. To kind of look at the building plan and sort of say like, what would housing look like in this situation? And that are the full maps that you have. The plan that they laid out has 76 apartments, 4 studios, 45 1-bedrooms, 27 2-bedrooms. And it, you know, there's lots of architectural language that better humans than I can get into. But this was not the part, you know, I kind of honestly assumed that anyone would look at like the bones of that building and be like, yeah, of course it is like possible to build apartments there. So the part that I was really interested in was the financial feasibility study. And one of the initial RFPs, which actually it looks like Councilman Roy has provided us in a different packet, so that's good. Was from the nonprofit development team, One Neighborhood Builders and WIN. And then in Ward 13, there's a developer, a for-profit developer who, you know, has a lot of experience with developments, especially like adaptive reuse developments. So we asked for a nonprofit and for-profit financial analysis of what is possible. And so the sort of shrunk down Excel spreadsheet is a pro forma that Armory Revival, well, Seth personally prepared. And I think there's a few things, and I'm happy to spend more time talking about all the different things. It's really important to point out that this pro forma already what's the word, presupposes is not the word, but I'm gonna use it, that there are no land costs, right? That, so when but back like 2 years ago, when the city initially requested RFPs and we got a housing proposal or one or two, one of the things that made that proposal so hard was because there was a land acquisition cost related to it. In this, the pro forma and the financial analysis from One Neighborhood Builders, there is no land acquisition cost. It assumes that the city would be very gracious and hand the building over for nothing essentially. So that's important to point out. If you skip straight to the bottom, and again, we could spend more time, and I'm happy to answer questions, or for June and I to tag team and answer questions. There's some really startling figures. So one, at the very bottom, we've got a total development cost per unit of $566,000. Very high. Number two, we've got a gross square footage development cost of 358, and that's regular, right? That's like pretty average. We have a net development cost of $704.64, which is institutionally high. And part of the problem is we've got this, there's a lot of unused space in any way that you kind of slice up the building. it ends up being like these grand hallways that were designed for kids to be in them. I think that I'm not, I don't think I've been shy on the topic of how I feel about charter expansion. I feel badly about it. I think that not taking any individual school outside of the conversation, because I'm not trying to, I'm really not trying to blame any parents for going to a school or blame any school for operating. I think that the state of Rhode Island and frankly across the country has created a system that is robbing public systems, right? So I feel that very deeply. I feel it for a long time. You can trace not the, current charter school, movement, but like, you can trace the origins of charter schools to. I'm not gonna do it, sorry, I'll stop myself. I'm not gonna do it, like, I feel very strongly that it does not create, the problems that I have are that we have, two systems, right? And so what I want there to be is genuine equity, for all of the students and their families, and for teachers. At the very same time, we have this giant building in the heart of Federal Hill. It's this giant building that is costing the city $300,000 a year to maintain. That is empty right now. That in the middle of a housing crisis, I can't justify like that level of cost per unit. And I should say I'm sure that folks will ask about it, so we can get into it in conversation, but like, there's a for-profit analysis and there's a stacks on stacks of public subsidy analysis. Both of those financial analysis still require, on top of land for free from the city, on top of any kind of state and federal subsidy that you can pile on, still also require like more subsidy from the city of Providence. Not a tax legalization, but like cash up front. I don't see that as a possibility. So I am in this like really difficult and untenable position. Where I do not see another use for this building. And think it is my obligation and my job to be like fiscally minded when it comes to the city of Providence. So to not have an empty building sit in the middle, in the heart of our city. At the same time, I talked to a lot of, while frankly, June was doing a lot of the wrangling of our contractors and partners, who deserve thanks because I did a lot of work in a pretty short period of time. I spent a lot of time talking to people. I spent a lot of time talking to my neighbors. And I spent some time talking to people in the Excel community and people probably in my neighborhood. And this is kind of where I always end up landing, which is, I don't know how to say to kids who are going to a school that they love. There's this empty building that I have no use for and would cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because people in the State House and people in Washington DC have made terrible decisions, you going to that school is bad for the city. Like I can't, that decision does not hurt with me. So we got this analysis towards like the end of last week. As soon as it all kind of landed, I called the sponsor of the resolution and Excel Academy and said, okay, we gotta talk more about this lease. It is substantially changed. It is still, a shared lease for a charter school. So I understand where we're going. I am gonna tag in our chief over there, operating officer, because Courtney Hopkins had worked on the lease from the beginning.
Right.
But yeah, I think it would be helpful to do an overview of the lease, and then I can chime in a little bit on what's changed really in the last like 3 days.
Thank you so much, Council President. I personally want to thank you for your hard work. another time we are going into this to make sure that we have the very best proposal that we can offer our city. So with that, I'm ready to call it out.
Okay, so you all have heard this from me before, but just as a reminder, I'm gonna leave the changes for you, Council President. Sure. Okay. So we have a 35-year agreement with a potential for 3 10-year renewals. For the first 5 years of the agreement, Excel will have access to, we're basically breaking the building into 3 spaces. One space that will be used by PPSD as swing space for the Asa Messer School. A shared middle space, and then a space that Excel will begin to rent. The rent escalates over time, which the council president will talk about. There are credits against the rent for capital improvements that Excel will make, which is projected about $14.3 million over the initial term. Excel is gonna invest about $1.3 million in the shared middle space of the building. That will pay for the construction costs that are going on now in that space. So if this lease didn't go through, those costs would be charged to the budget that is the allocation for the renovation of the semester. That's how we handle swing space for school construction. So if this does go through, it basically means there's more money for the semester school project. Additionally, there's $1.2 million from an outside donor that will be provided to the city for the use of the renovation of the Asa Messer swing space. So again, further reducing the amount of the Asa Messer project budget that has to be spent on a building that they're only going to be in for 5 years. Asa Messer is not going to be in that building, but PPSD will have that building for 5 years, and so they'll have an opportunity to swing another school for construction purposes in that side of the building that there. The lease continues to commit $50,000 a year in neighborhood improvements that will be directed by the Ward 13 counselor. Excel has landlord responsibilities for the building, so that means if something big breaks, Excel will have to fix it. There's a big failure in the roof, if the HVAC goes, those costs will be borne by Excel as the landlord. If Excel isn't in the building and PPSD is the only occupant of the building, they'll be responsible for the care and maintenance of the entire building. So even though they'll only be there for 5 years, if the HVAC goes, we'll have to pay for that out of the capital revolving fund, which is the limited funding that we have for improvements that are made across the district. I think that is everything at a high level that is important, that is in the statement.
Okay, so the other, on page 1, you'll see there's a, relatively modest, but a rent escalator that after, Excel is in the full building after 2030, there's a 2% increase, and that continues every 5 years for the remainder of the term. There is on page 3 of 16. Sorry, this was our law department updating some of which this is not a substantial change. On page 4 of 16 is the community fund that Chief Hawkins just referenced. Okay, at the bottom of page 5, so we're still in the section that covers construction. There's an addition of an apprenticeship requirement for contracts over $3 million. So that is always important to me as a community benefit because it changes. It means that like when we're doing any kind of public money into infrastructure and capital plans, there's an opportunity to actually build a career and not just a job. It's a huge investment in the neighborhood and the city. On page 13 and 14 are well, I would yeah. On page 13 and 14 are things that are entirely new. So there is an informational data request. We've talked a lot internally about data questions that we've had, and I think at these hearings and meetings. But it requires an annual report, as does the construction, I'm sorry. On page 8 of 16. There's two new additions. One of them is an annual report from Excel on construction that has happened throughout the year, which is important, especially because there is, a discount on the rent. There is a direct payment of you are improving a public building, you're gonna get some money for school. This one is more on the school performance and who the school is serving. So, informational data is section number 13. And the conversation that we have had here in the council is we really want to know where the students year to year. We have real questions about disciplinary procedures, and we'd like to see that data disaggregated by race and ethnicity. We want to know, of course, by race and ethnicity, who's attending the school. We want to know academic performance, and we want to know these things as much as available relative to the home districts that the students are from. And so I think a lot of what I have come away from in this process is maybe not, entirely surprising. Like we need data to make good decisions. We owe it to the people who are sitting in our seats in the future to get like real data and real information. So that is section 13. Section 14 does two things that are important to me, near and dear to my heart. So one, it acknowledges and respects. It says that the lessee acknowledges and respects the rights of employees to organize. It says that the lessee will not intimidate, harass, otherwise punish any member of its staff for organizing in a union. And then I don't know if folks are aware, but right now in the city of Providence, there is a charter school who is spending a lot of public money hiring a very fancy anti-union lawyer. This lease prohibits that for Excel to do the same. And I believe that is the majority of the changes. That's true. Yeah, all right. So I'm sure there's lots to discuss and we can go into detail on all these leases.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Chief Hopkins. Any questions from committee members? Councilman Royce?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to state before I begin is I have a lot of questions on this, so bear with me, please. And I'm not sure where to go because that was a lot. So I guess my first question is there a representative from PPFD here today to answer questions? Like, can I just be very frank with this committee?
There's
And
no public comment.
a little bit nice to have that. This is. I've got a list of questions for PVSD prepared, and they are an important piece to this. And to have them not here is quite frankly disappointing.
Counselor, I would just say, I believe that Chief Hopkins plans are financial. But so one thing I didn't mention is that there is, it doesn't matter. I think that Chief Hopkins is prepared to answer financial questions relative to PPSD.
Well, I think you know, the
Some of them.
What about Excel fabulous? That question is that.
Is it sell here?
It's not a public hearing.
I can't get one entity over the other. If I open up for public comments, that everyone will have to put it back. We already had a public hearing on this. There were amendments made as very same leads. And now we have those amendments. We're going over the amendments. Council President, Chief of Staff, and Chief Forming Hopkins, I here to answer anything pertaining to the lease itself, any changes that have been made.
There is a letter of support for the superintendent.
Which is chief, which is why I wanted them to be here today. Because I had questions specifically on just the money side of it when a child leaves the district. And Chief, I have no doubt you could probably answer that, but I truly was expecting Mr. Scott, who was like, in my experience, has been the authority on PBSD's finances. So it's not a hearing day,
So,
because
just to be clear, and I've said this in public testimony, this is a school that has already been provided a charter that will exist within that district. So the question of money leaving the district is not necessarily relevant to this lease. They can take another building and pay a private landlord for that building. Same amount of money will leave the district, and maybe less money will be available for education of their students.
in fact, I think we're probably gonna disagree on that point. The larger point why I wanted PBSD to be here is what's been on my heart, truly. And I know the council president feels this way as well, because we've had so many conversations. I wanted to ask PPSD about my calculations, because yes, it is true that Ryan has already approved Excel's application. No, I can't dispute that. It's just fact. But what this does is accelerate. It absolutely accelerates the defunding of PBSD. And so I had questions directly from PBSD because they came out with an endorsement of this plan. Specifically, in my calculations, in Excel is expected, and my colleagues, I create a packet. If you look at it, it shows the right here. It shows Excel's application, like a screenshot of it, and how many students, by 2030, will be enrolled into Excel Academy. And the superintendent of Excel had shared with me that 85% of the student body will be made up of Providence students. So let me, again, I bring up the BSD because I wanted to ask some questions about this. So bear with me. So according to Excel Academy's approved charter application, by the year 2031, Excel will operate a K-12 school serving 2,186 students. And that I'm sure that number will fluctuate, and it's not totally accurate, but that's the projection. And approximately 85% of the students, as the superintendent of Excel had said to me over email, would be Providence students. That equates to 1,858 students will leave Providence Public Schools in the next, I predict, 5 years, because that's what the timeline shows. And I just want to stress this. Providence spends $18,376 per student each year. You multiply that by 1,858 students. That is a gross loss of $34.15 million in total funding leaving the district. I say that to say, we were just sued by RIDE. $15 million for the fund, for not this administration, certainly not this council, but decades of divestment. And so I say that as a backdrop because I feel like this is an acceleration of that. Now, to be fair, 34 million is the gross loss. The real loss, in reality, school districts can only reduce their cost by about 50% for every dollar lost when enrollment drops. So I want to be fully generous and transparent and say that the net loss will be 17 million. So should this lease go through, we are going to face 17 million go out the door, on top of the 15 million that the city we just had to pay after being sued by RIDE. And I don't want to just focus on the dollars because this isn't just about budgets. Like when I think about this, children, families, the soul of our public school system, behind every per pupil figure is a real kid. This hurts kids with disabilities. And right now, roughly 38% of PPSD's per pupil spending, over 7,000 per student, goes towards special education services. These are the most vulnerable students in our school district. And as a school social worker, I see this every day. I want to just, in layman terms, explain that a little bit, because I really think this is the moment to really think about this. When it comes to kids with disabilities, I want you to think of it as social security. The workers right now are essentially funding retirees. And that is exactly what, in a general population, special education depends on the general population to fund those services that cost so much money, and they're fixed costs. They're never gonna change, never gonna lessen, they're gonna keep rising. And the more we send students out of the district, who's gonna be holding the bag? It's students with disabilities, the most vulnerable. And I just, this is passion, so I want to just preface, like, I'm not, I'm sort of yelling, I apologize.
Take your time.
And I'm in this world, so when I think about special education services, I think about me sitting in IEP meetings. I've watched exhausted parents plead for services for their child that they're legally entitled to. It's a federal mandate, and if we continue to not only allow this to happen, to defund PTSD, hurt special education services, not deliver special education services, because now we can't afford to hire staff. These are fixed costs. Everyone's spread out too thin. And when we don't have staff members in PTSD to sufficiently serve our kids with disabilities, what that does, it puts us at risk of lawsuits, and we have been sued in this city for just that. So if your posture is, look, I love charters, I'm not here to change your opinion about that. I'm here to simply say, if we care about all students, then this is not showing that at all. I did not think I was going to pivot to this. I'm just discouraged. I had hoped, and I also sent an email. There's an email in your packet, where if you're questioning where I got this math from, I had already emailed Mr. Scott, and asked for his opinion on if my model was fairly accurate. And he had said it was a pretty reasonable analysis. There was a few caveats, such as, when the model I sent to him, it showed what would happen when just 500 students leave the district. I just used the same calculations, and all I did was basic math. I took how many students are projected to leave PBSD as a result of this lease. He said it was a reasonable way to estimate the impact of enrollment loss. And again, he had said, as a caveat, he gave me some lists, and I'm saying this to be fair. He said, first, while PBSD does lose funding when students leave, it can cut some costs. So the net loss might not be quite as severe as the top line number I'm suggesting. But we're only talking partial savings, not the full recovery. And this is an important point, because schools still need heat, buses still run. You can't shrink a classroom like a department store. Second, it sales enrollment growth was phased in over time, not all at once. This is another caveat he said. So the number I just gave you doesn't happen. I'm being very generous. It doesn't happen all at once. It's going to happen over the course of 5 years, perhaps 8 years. Third, that 50% cost reduction figure I referenced just now is from Ernst and Young analysis, which the state had hired them to do this. And he had, Mr. Scott had said it was just an average. In practice, savings vary, he says. It's easier to trim costs when students leave at break grades like K6 or 9. But when students leave in scattered grades, it's much harder to consolidate staff or eliminate positions. And he's right. But the conclusion was, the larger picture, even with its caveats, it doesn't change significantly the cost that we would impose on this city, on PTSD, if we allow this lease to go through. I'm gonna pause there because I want to yield the floor to my colleagues. I do have many questions, Chair, but I realize I'm talking a lot. I want to be fair. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Councilor Peterson.
I have a long list of questions that I'm hoping somebody can answer for me. It's very much infringes on whether or not I believe we should move forward with this. While I share some of the same sentiments that Councilor Gordon says, I'm focusing very mainly on this lease and whether or not it's good for the city. Just putting that out there. So my first question is, who retained the ownership of the property at the conclusion of a potentially 65-year lease?
Oh, I'm so sorry, there's one piece that is different that I didn't say out loud. It does require at the end of 35 years, it requires, Excel or, the leasing of the building to affirmatively say, I want to renew, and it requires the mayor and council to, yeah, I forgot that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So at the end of the initial lease for 35 years, comes back to the council. And the mayor.
At the end of whatever the term is, the building is retained by the city.
Thank you. I don't know that you can do, but how can this lease agreement directly benefit public school students across the city?
I think most directly, when PBS, as I said, when PBSD takes control of that building, which is technically supposed to happen in August, the district will have to bear the full cost of that building, heating, electric, maintenance, and which will take from their overall budget. If this lease goes through Excel, we'll share many of the operating costs and be responsible for repair of the building and other landlord responsibilities. So that's financially, I'm not gonna speak to from the teaching and sure.
Thank you. Has the city conducted a long-term impact analysis on how the lease will affect enrollment funding and resource allocation across public school districts over the next 10, 20, 50 years?
We have not, because as I said, this is the charter that has been granted already. I think the arguments here, I hear all of them. I would encourage people in the K-12 council, here's other charters, applications to bring them there. This is a school that is going to exist, whether they're in this building or not. So your corresponding enrollment question is irrelevant as it relates to this piece.
Sure, but what we're talking about is whether or not we should allow a charter school to be in a public building. When charter schools are allowed to be able to fundraise in a very different way than public schools are. And also the fact, and this is probably my biggest point of contention with this lease at all, is that we're putting and priming and positioning the school department to be a subleasee to a charter school, which is nothing that we've ever done before, or we should do, or even set a precedent about. So I really want to be able to understand what the effects are going to be going forward, because if we're establishing this precedent now, I want to be prepared, fully prepared to understand what's going to happen for our public properties going forward. Whether I'm in the seat or not, I don't necessarily know that as a taxpayer in the city of Providence, I want to be able to afford any entity that isn't the public school department that I've been funding with my taxpayer dollars, the opportunity to be able to maybe potentially give us some rental income that's not necessarily set in stone on a yearly basis, and be able to also offset with taxpayer dollars how that's going to look.
I'm not sure what the question is there. I'll remind everyone that charter schools are also public schools that are funded with taxpayer dollars. Any public building would have to come back before this council. So we would have, this is not a permission for all public buildings. This is just this public building, which has been thoroughly studied with an immediate need for a school that already has a charter.
Sorry, let me just rephrase my question. Have we ever, in the history of the city of Providence, ever made the Providence Public School Department a subleasee to a charter school?
I would say we're not naming it, we're actually just requiring it on behalf of the district. Excel wouldn't have had to have had PBSD. PBSD requested that we accommodate this, and we worked it into the lease. But there's never been an arrangement like this, to my knowledge. But I want to be clear that the original lease that came before you did not include the district. The district was not in favor of it because they wanted to be a they wanted to be able to have access to the building. And as a subtenant, they don't have to take responsibility for the building as they would if they were there by themselves or if they were the primary user.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yes.
This is a good question to get answered, by PTSD. My understanding of it is that there are financial considerations about being in that building that they are not prepared to take on. And by having it arranged this way, then, Excel or whoever local police is responsible for those financials. So I can't speak to it more than that, and I think you should actually get clarity on that.
Sure. So then can I, just a quick follow-up then, is PPSC not financially available to make this space happen without this lease?
It will take resources from the new school that's being built, the new A semester. So the, $2.5 million that is being provided will have to come from the A semester project budget. And the ongoing costs, heat, electricity, somebody breaks a window, all of that will have to come from the PPSD budget. And then any capital improvements that need to be made will come from the PPSD revolving fund, which I spend a lot of time helping to manage. I can tell you that like the money that's in the revolving fund for this year is basically already prescribed for improvements already. So it would mean that schools are not getting things that they thought they were getting. We're not fixing roofs, et cetera. I'll also just say that there are a couple of changes that were requested by a semester going into Carl Loro that have been held because we didn't know if we would have enough money for them. This will allow us to make those changes that were requested by the school division.
Okay, so this is my last follow-up. So with regards to what you said, is there a concrete net rental that we're going to be receiving every single year from, because you're telling me $300,000 to run this building, right? So can we see at least $300,000 in net rental income or revenue for the city that we would then put into the maintenance fund of PPSD? Is that something that we can?
So to be clear, we won't have to spend $300,000. So the benefit to the city is not spending the $300,000 that we're spending now, plus the revenue that comes into the city for the rent paid, which in the first year for half the building is almost $100,000, will go into the revolving fund for the benefit of all of the other schools.
So it's a guaranteed 100,000.
In the first 5 years, when they're only having half the building, it depends on the construction costs. But that would be the minimum. And then it starts to escalate, and after the capital funds have been, fully credited, it is roughly $1 million, and then it escalates at 2 million. So that would be $1 million going into the revolving fund for the purpose of fixing other PPSD buildings.
I'll also add to that if they were to acquire a different building, that will be another major building, taken off the tax roll, which will be another negative loss. On top of the $300,000 plus whatever that would be able to get. Councilor Harris, please.
I actually, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have my question answered. I was from you, I asked, the lawyers, when a statement be made, about, the receipts that's being added, as 500 seats.
Yeah.
That is, being added to this building, to the school. I guess it already been answered, no matter what. That is already, I mean, school funding source, we've known for years have been a mess. And for years, I think people have tried to figure out from a state perspective, how do we balance that off, you know what I mean? And, this is an example of how, with the charter schools, how they are able to, even with Finance building, how they're able to move the students through. So with that funding. So it all goes back, this is just my perspective, I made it very clear to you and Councilwoman Peterson that I have not had a child in school for a very, very long time. I respect you. And you know, your, what they would say, boots on the ground type of attitude around schools and what's going on in the schools. My question was answered, because I guess when we was delivering, all I could think of was, well, will this happen anyways, you know? And I just heard the chair say, yes, it could be a building that could come off the tax roll, which we definitely depend on the taxes. As compared to what you guys are saying now, this is what we are looking for. How do we make sure that the kids are, you know, getting what they need as sources, but at the same time, you know what I mean? Continue.
Can you mind if we go to somebody else? You want to respond?
I just want to understand,
Go right
it's, I think, Richard,
Brought up some good stuff though.
I just want to echo again that it is true that Excel Academy has already had an established application 3 years ago. It was approved without a facility. That is, to the chief's point, she's correct when she says we should take our anger out on the elementary, secondary council for continuously approving applications without really, I think, taking into consideration the fiscal health of the cities. But it's not that we don't have agency. We have ownership of our buildings, and I think, Councilwoman, I think it's a matter of, we know it's gonna happen. But do we go the route of a fast bleed? Do we bleed out right now? Or do we walk this journey where we know it's coming, but it's gonna be a slow bleed? Because here's the thing, we approved this lease today. We have buildings, buildings coming offline very soon. And they're gonna circle the wagon. They're gonna circle the wagon, and there's gonna be, I guarantee, another lease. Is that $34 million again? So in 10 years, we're facing a 64 million revenue loss, gross revenue loss. We can't afford that. We keep defunding public education in the city, and part of that, a big reason, undermining, the reason why we have declining student enrollment is because, yes, people are not having kids these days, but it's also because kids are leaving our district and going to public charter schools, and it's dismantling our ability to fund the educational experience for children at PPSD. When we think about what's at stake tonight, it's not only this lease, but the buildings that's gonna come offline, and we're gonna come right back. If it's not Excel, it's Achievement First. If it's not Achievement First, it's another child. So, Chair, you've been generous. I will give it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we go to President Sanchez, just to reply, and my opinion when it comes to this term, because it's the third time I hear of defunding public education. I don't think you could ever defund public education as long as you keep invested in private school kids, which is what is happening here. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate everyone coming here to have this dialogue. It's my opinion that we let too much oxygen in this conversation as city councilors. I think it's appropriate to do our reasonable amount of collaboration and listening to our neighbors and different community partners. But to Councilor Royce's point, I share a lot of similar sentiments. This isn't necessarily specifically about this lease, as it's been brought up by certain members around this table. These charter seats have been approved already. And to add another fact to the systemic issues that are facing our public education system right now is a lot of states, Massachusetts, for example, has a cap on how many charter school seats a municipality can have. I think it's around 18%. Here in Rhode Island, there's no cap. So if local municipalities, which there is, want to turn the whole school district into a charter school district, it's completely allowed by law. And that's where I have a big issue here is we have a educational commissioner who's been very friendly, if not pro-charter. We have a governor who started mayoral academies, which is another version of charter. So very friendly, if not pro-charter. We have a mayor who is also very friendly, if not pro-charter. So we are literally the only line of defense when it comes to even questioning charter school leases here in the city of Providence. And I'd rather lose a building in my community and any one of our communities off the tax roll than to say the city council approved this charter school lease with Excel Academy. Public education, as we all know around here, is the foundation to any society. And I've had the honor and privilege of talking to local elected officials, not only here in our state, but across the country. And when it comes to charter school conversations, it's always the same. As a Latino, I'm very conscious of who charter schools primarily targeted. It's not, the Bristols of Rhode Island. It's not the Jamestowns of Rhode Island. It's the urban core. Because of decisions that were made decades ago and still continue to happen at our state house. The proper investments into a public education system are happening. Intentionally or unintentionally, that's not really the topic. So a lot of urban schools struggle for many different reasons. We got systemic issues, we got funding issues, we got challenges with certain contracts. So obviously people in our neighborhoods pay the price. Generations of kids here in our city are paying the price right now. That's something that probably hurts me the most as a city councilor, that we haven't been able to address in a urgently matter, is that all of us here as decision makers are failing thousands of kids right now. And that's something we all have to admit, that we're not, the sole blame for it, but we're part of the issue. So a lot of families, will be desperate for the perception of something different, of something better. And I think that's where a lot of charter schools, not specifically Excel Academy, it's, I think it's in their plan is they see, an opportunity. So they take it. That's their mission, that's their donor's mission, that's their agenda. So they take the opportunity. So all that to say is that we are literally the only line of defense when it comes to the acceleration of completely defunding, because that's what it comes down to. Right now, there is no mechanisms with how our funding formula is structured, that all of the money goes through the home district to the charter schools in that district, and how it's allocated is completely, not under the responsibilities of said public school district. So there's obviously systemic issues that need addressing. We definitely need to advocate for a cap on charter school seats in a municipality. I think I read or I was told recently that Central Falls is gonna be almost 50% charter school seats within the next 5 years. That's scary. That is completely abandoning one fundamental right that we all have here as residents of the city. It's very dangerous territory that we're walking right now. And obviously the finances of everything is something that we're all talking about, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than any one of our terms. The impact that our kids and our future generations of kids are gonna have to pay is gonna be unforgivable, to be honest. So I mean, you guys obviously know where I'm gonna vote on this. But I hope, as city elected officials, you not only think about the $300,000 that we're paying. Like that, to me, that's completely offensive to the bigger picture. Doesn't even matter when it comes to the bigger conversation. And that's the one that sits on finances. So I know how tight our budget and our finances are in the city. But if we're using that as a talking point to convince us or to validate our decision to move this forward. And obviously, I'm not gonna disrespect the neighborhood of where it's at, but if this was in my neighborhood, I'd rather have an empty building there that we're paying $300,000 than to give it over to a charter school system for the next 65 years, because the impact that that's gonna have on our community, not only specific to that project, but the message and the signal it's gonna send to folks at our state houses. The city council has absolutely no authority when it comes to approving charter schools, and the very little power that they have of controlling their public buildings, they gave it to us in platter with a side of dessert. Because that's essentially what we're doing here, colleagues, is we're sending a message to other charter school systems, to pro-charter school folks, that the city of Providence has no power, and any power that they do have, they don't use it because of special interests or arguments of finances. We're always gonna have the argument of finances here in the city of Providence. Unless we get one of our private colleges, or we get rich folks to pay their fair share. Finances is always gonna be a point of contention. But when it comes to providing and making sure that all students have access to a good public quality education system, which I think is one of our main responsibilities, we're not offering that by moving in this direction. So to wrap up my comments and concerns is that, yes, charter school seats for this school have been approved. But the bigger picture is that by moving in this direction, we really are giving up on the public education system here in Providence. And that's something I'm not willing to do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Gold.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I really appreciate the discussion and the conversation tonight, and I appreciate everyone's perspective. I'll just say as this former student of Providence Public Schools, I went to Providence Public Schools from K through 8. I got lucky, my mom, a single mother, I'm first generation immigrant, decided that she was gonna have me enroll in private school from, 9 through 12. And that changed my trajectory, I think, forever. And I think I get the philosophical arguments here. I've spent over 10 years as an early childhood educator. I taught 4th grade. So, I know education in and out. It's my training, I have an MAT from Brown University, Master's of Arts in Teaching. So I can have any conversation with anyone about pedagogy, and I think, teaching, albeit at a private school. I want Providence Public School kids to have the same opportunities as the kids at Wheeler and Moses Brown. And I think that what was very compelling for me, irrespective of your position on this, and look, I'm again strong supporter of Providence Public Schools. I support our teachers' unions. I can't look at those families in the face. Those families who are disproportionately communities of color, who packed this chamber weeks ago and said, look, I want this opportunity for my kids. It's like, I just saw my mother there, like in their faces when they were testifying, saying, I want this opportunity for my kids. And I just can't look those families in the face and say, no, we're not going to give you this opportunity. And I get it. Like, I get the philosophical, I get the arguments, but I think we have to humanize the families here who want this opportunity for their kids. And regardless of whether or not, they decide to go public or private or charter, it's their choice. And we have to allow parents and families to do what's best for their kids. I think these things aren't mutually exclusive. It's not about saying, you know, because we support a lease that has been significantly improved, and I want to remind everybody, like, the last time I voted on this, I voted against it. I voted against the lease because I thought it could be improved, and I think to the credit of this council and the council leadership and the council president, there was a lot of work that was done to change the lease, to make it better, to improve it on behalf of our families and our students and our kids. And we have to remember the kids come first. Like, let's center the kids around this argument. This isn't about teachers' unions. This isn't about charter. This isn't about private. This isn't about public. This is about giving our kids an opportunity to have a better educational experience and educational outcomes that allowed them to succeed in the long term. And I think we all agree with that. Whether or not you agree with this lease, I think we should give these kids an opportunity to attend this school. And I just wanted to share that for the record.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone that has not spoken yet? Would like to speak? Would like to speak. You know, we gotta wrap it up. So,
Okay.
I'll go back to final comments.
Thank you very much, sir. Great points. First of all, we have an empty building. We're losing money. Second, we have an institution who wants to take over, fix up the building, even the opportunity to push food to be there. So I got families calling me every day. We like to have the right to choice. By doing this, we're giving them the right to choice. They wanna go public, we got public school, we got great teachers there, they work very hard. They wanna go private, if they got money, send it over, like, you went to private school, I didn't went to private, school. I was broke. But now, if I can, I did send my kids to public school, grade school, I went to public school too. But if they wanna go to public school, they got 3 choices. So everything here is for education, for the future. I might not be here tomorrow, but I'll be very happy to see Providence kids to rise. And this is an opportunity to, an empty building is breaking every day. We have the right to give it to the institution who wanna fix it up and bring it back alive. And then pay public and public shop. Finally, we got something that they will make so that.
Thank you, Councilman. So, Councilman Vitale.
Yeah, no, you go.
Councilman, Chairwoman, and please.
Sorry, I just had a
Pro
quick
tem
question.
Administrator Gentleman.
Sorry. I just had a quick question on the finances. Chief, I'm just, the gross rent, 20% of the gross rent is what the minimum is that correct? And so that's 98,325
In the first year,
for first year, you said?
for the first 5 years when they have passed the bill.
Okay,
That's assuming that the capital investment is as predicted,
okay,
because they will have to document the capital investment, and then that will be the offset.
okay. And then I'm sorry, then after that 5 years, then they take over.
And it doubles.
Okay. All right. And then you mentioned that we would be taking in $1 million after the capital investment.
Yeah, so in 2047, it increases to 600,000. And then it goes to $1 million, and then the council president talked about the escalation every 5 years.
Has that chart been made available for us?
It hasn't, but I can share it.
I would like that. Thank you. That would help. Thank you. And is it possible to get it from soon so we can have it distributed before we vote?
All set?
Thank you.
Pro tem, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be direct and share my personal experiences and also the work that's been done. right from the start, I will be stating it now that in essence that I'm supporting the initiative of this lease. And I say that is because we, as a council, through the leadership of myself and the president and the staff, have done a tremendous job in providing us the data, providing us information. I struggled with this decision more so than even the budget. Because these are the two most important things, at least for me, and I know for all of us. It's about the budget, it's about education for me. Some of us are into more of the, DPW or bridges, etc. And I say that is because my former life, I would say, as a legislator, I ran and I legislated with that perspective of education and looking at how do we close the achievement gap in the city of Providence, especially for the public schools. And during those times, there wasn't even a charter, just only one, which was Times Square. And that was an experiment that within the teachers union, when the discussion of choice was coming up, that was an experiment that took place. So it was always said that teachers were always teachers unions were in favor of charter schools. The conversation came to Rhode Island, and through the leadership of governors and legislators, decision was made to accept and expand these charter schools. At that time, there wasn't probably heavy debate in terms of capping and so forth. And we went that route. I wasn't thrilled about it because, as Justin, Councilman Roy was indicated, that writing on the wall took place about 15 years ago. The charter school will continue to expand in the city of Providence, and particularly in the minority community, and particularly in the struggling, developing community. I.e., the case was because our kids was failing. I got friends and I got family that could barely write and read that went to the public school system. The only choice that my mother had during those times were either the Catholic school, Bishop McVinney, LaSalle, or public school. And if you got lucky, you got into Nathaniel Green and then classical. And so for some of us, we barely got out of high school. So with those lenses, you could see over time growing up in our inner city, we had as people used to say, we used to have a pipeline. And that was high school dropout to jail. That has been reduced. Leadership is very difficult. Governing is very difficult. Making decisions is very difficult. All I know is that, we've had charter schools in the city of Providence. We extended at least to achievement first. That was a debate also, the same debate. Yes, this is about charter schools. This is about parents deciding. This is about people that have self-interest in some ways or another. But yes, we're looking out for our kids. And I will tell you that for me, struggling with this, and I got families and friends that are in the school, are working in schools, and well, this is Providence, this is Rhode Island, we know each other. And so what I continuously see is that we are not changing any systems. Time after time, we go to the boards or the public school system, even those who are in office, whether it's mayor, whether it's governor, when they're running, is how we're gonna change the system. And we may make a small increment, but this body in the city council is not gonna do that so fast to impact the lives of these kids that could be going to schools. Now, the finances of this, it's writing on the wall. We could have an empty building, we're gonna pay for it, and where we're gonna get all that money? We have other schools that are empty. That's next. So I'm not thrilled, just like as the president was indicated, we're all supportive of the right to be able to have a stronger voice, whether it's in the union, whether it's management, and so forth. I think we need to focus on systems. And if you really want to change the cap on charter school, we were successful working with the legislature this past session and change some of the housing classification. We focus really with our Providence delegation or run for state office to make sure that these systems are changed. But in the meantime, our kids, when I say our kids, I represent a district that is about 80, I think it's 85% Hispanic. Minority, it's about like 95, 98 or something like that. All I know is that kids continue to not do well in school. They need more attention. Parents in the Hispanic community, in any community, but I could tell you in the Hispanic community, immigration is not the top issue that they've been concerned for the past 20 years. It's not economics, it's been education, because all they want is their kids to go and get an education. We're a product of that. Luckily, we've benefited from it because our kids at least now are, at least around this table, that our parents are tracking the way and going on to college. First generation, I'm that. And I'm very proud of that. And for us to be in a position right now, not just solely based on because it's charter or not, but this is just about the impacts of the lives of these kids. And we always say, finally, we always say that as legislators, city council, we want community to be involved, call us, write to us. They've done that. People have emailed, sent letters, information on both ends. Teachers that live in Providence, that live in Cranston and Warwick, or parents. All I can tell you is that the lives that we are going to, if we're going to impact, and based on this, is the kids, because we say that we'll continue to do that. By denying going forward this lease, I think we will continue to yes, slow down the process, but that means also more kids continue to come short on their education. And so that's what I want to say. Thank you.
I just take one more comment from Mr. Noroya. Do you feel like we're gonna win up to?
I'll try. I mean, I have tons of more questions, Chair. I mean, it's. And one of the reasons why I have tons of questions is because the department that is administering education in the city is not here today. We're speaking about, you know, Counselor, I appreciate your commentary. I don't fault parents for sending their kids to charter schools. Never did. In fact, I am proud to say that I worked for a charter school, Blackstone Valley Prep. I love the teachers there. I love the students, and I love the families. And I don't pit workers against each other. I don't pit students against each other. I understand that the view is that as a parent who is desperate, a charter school is a lifeboat to them. Meanwhile, what we're dealing with is not a public charter school versus traditional public school debate. It's a math problem. Okay, so what is happening is we're giving a few lifeboats away, and we're keeping students in PPSD on a sinking ship. And it's gonna remain a sinking ship once that money continues to be siphoned out of the school district. Do we want our kids to be on a sinking ship? The two greatest academic indicators and outcomes as a teacher, you know, is number one, socioeconomic status, and number two is funding of public education. That is the reason why kids achieve success in our public schools. Can we invest in them? And can we make sure when they're at home, they're eating, they have housing, they have a roof over their head? And that is out of the control of many teachers. And teachers, I know many of you are here from Providence School District. I'm not saying this because you're here. I don't mean to call us a sinking ship. That's not a blemish on you. But it is we're going to continue to look terrible in the media. We're going to continue, they're going to continue to weaponize oh, this child is not proficient in math. This child is not proficient in English. It's because it is directly tied to the funding of educational services. And this idea that we just throw up our hands. Oh, it's gonna happen. It's already here. We just throw up our hands. Counselor, you have just said there's gonna be several more buildings coming offline. Are we gonna return here and have the same conversation? I hope not. I really hope not. The last few thoughts on my mind is, and I'll be honest, I feel rushed here, but, you know,
But
it's not,
we'll take the time.
this is, you know,
We're gonna be over.
we keep hearing that there's a vacant building, it's gonna cost $300,000 a year to maintain. I'd like to know where everyone is coming up with that number, because I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen expenses. Maybe that's a question for the chief.
An estimate for the cost of that building over the past year.
I just want to see documentation that is, you know, I know it probably feels like, why don't you believe me? As a city councilor, I just want to see that.
But just to be clear, even if you don't believe me, let's say it's $100. PBST is either going to pay 100% of the $100 or 50%. So, and that money is going to come from the budget that they have for the schools. So it will take away from something else. So even if it's not that, the question before you now is, do we think the district should pay for the entire cost of that budget, of that school building for the next 5 years? And I can tell you that all of our school buildings, because they're inefficient and need to be upgraded, the energy costs are sky high, like. You are right, we need more money for the things that matter. Our buildings are failing the district, and that's why we're doing so much to improve them. This building is going to be a burden, regardless of what the exact amount is.
Chief, it appears to me that we are. I don't mean to, like, I feel like, Chief, I'm fairly targeting you, I'm sorry. I just like,
Councilman.
yeah, I know, I just, you know, I feel like she's taking the brunt of my passion here, I'm sorry. I just wanna.
Fine, I know you're passionate about
I
this.
appreciate your passion, and, you know, it is, you know, it is, I appreciate it. I wish that we didn't have to have these big debates, and it could be about the kids in the school who want to go to the school, the teachers who want to teach there, and a building that will be, you know, for those of you who have blighted buildings in your ward, like, it is a problem. Like, this building has been broken into a number of times this year, and we're fixing it out of money that would go to lots of other things that you all want to spend money on. So it is, you know, I will share that the chairman has an empty school building in his ward. He is very dissatisfied with the level of service I am providing to keep that building, you know, not looking terrible. We are doing a housing study in partnership with the Department of Housing as it relates to that building. So, like, I know there's a lot of bigger debate happening now, and I appreciate your passion. This really is about this proposal, which has been, you know, we've been working on for a long time.
All right, so I'm gonna go to Councilor Peterson. Thank you. Actually, before I go there, yeah, there is we can see how they use the estimator, which is a price set per square footage when you're going to build. There is also a price set for square footage when you're going to maintain. So this building altogether is about 120,000 square feet. So that will be an estimate.
Thank you. Not to belabor any points here, but I just want to, you know, I focus in on specifically the weeks at hand because I do have some knowledge, working in the educational setting for about 7 or 8 years. I understood exactly how much it costs to provide students with individual supports that they needed, additional supports that they needed to the tune of $70,000 per student that parents would struggle to pay to be able to provide their kids this undivided attention because their kid required. So I felt very strongly about taking away the personal objective of all of this and really focusing in on just this particular list. The reality is that to wait until 2047 to receive $600,000 from the school who is already set to be able to receive some extra funding from the U.S. Department of Education based on, or was it 500 million that they're gonna be giving to charter schools, that's a separate thing. The opportunity to be able to fundraise in a way that public schools cannot is also a separate thing. And quite frankly, in my opinion, my obligation to this city and to the students of this city is to worry about every single one of them, not just 500 seats. And when I can't guarantee every single child to be able to afford that opportunity, I agree with you, Councilman Gonzalez. You said, I can't look these people in the eyes. I get it. I am a parent. I know what it's like to sacrifice every day to be able to give my kids what I have, what I can give them. And I can't look any parent in the eye and say, I'm so sorry that this opportunity is not afforded to you because you're on a waiting list. Because the only option that you have, because you didn't make it into the school that is giving you 500 seats, is to go back to the school that you don't necessarily want to go to. In my personal opinion, when we divest from our public schools, we're taking away the opportunity to make them better. And we can do and bond and do all the things that we need to do to make these buildings beautiful. But what really needs to happen is that we need to continue to invest in our students and our teachers and our curriculum to make sure that every single one of them has a shot, not just 500 to 960 or whatever it is. I cannot look any parent in the eye and sit there and say, I'm so sorry that you don't have this option right now to you. When we should be prioritizing making our schools better all the time. That's a full stop. And when you sit and have a charter school that can invest certain portions, give you a little bit, kind of seems like scraps to me, not gonna lie to you, that you're gonna be able to receive way down the line, when I know that they pay a fair amount to be able to have outside advocacy groups go and knock on doors, put these little signs up and make sure that the constituent is very well aware of the fact that you didn't vote for a charter school. That to me poses a question of what the actual investment is. Is it actually to the kid or is it actually to the damn school? I'm sorry, this is a hard no for me. We are not doing all of our kids a service, and this is not fair to the entire student population of the city.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So that's gonna conclude this discussion. I know this is a very heated, it's a very passionate conversation. I want to thank each and every one of you that is here for the last almost 3 hours, especially to the teachers, to the people that are visiting us. I've just been sitting, standing here because this is critical and this is important. But this is about a lease. It's about opportunity, it's about choices. And we all had an opportunity tonight to express ourselves and to let the world know how we feel about this. I will not do the same, I'll say it. As I feel that my duty here is to provide opportunity to all of our colleagues, not just the 8, 9 of us that are here. So with that said, I'd like to offer that opportunity for the rest of our colleagues to express themselves, have an opportunity to report on this. So I want to ask that we send it to the floor and have a good end to this discussion. At the floor, if we vote it up, or we vote it back. But it's something that needs to happen.
I make a motion to move it without recommendation.
That's it. I'm not entertaining.
Can we do without recommendation as amended, because we did amend it?
As amended.
A motion has been made. Motion has been made.
Yes. And
So,
seconded, sorry.
It was second by Councilman Lyons. You sign. All in favor, aye. Opposed?
I mean, you made a motion.
Should we do a roll call? Planning board,
Can you repeat the motion?
The motion is to forward without recommendation as amended to the full council. Chairman Espinal.
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Peterson. Councilwoman Harris. Councilman Vargas. Councilor Royas.
Aye.
You have 5 ayes, the motion carries.
thank you. Motion to adjourn. Made by Councilman Reinhardt, second by Councilman Peterson, all in favor, aye. Opposed? It's having the committee.